Hello everybody, welcome to Dirty Air. I'm your host Alex Lambert, and let's talk about NASCAR at Darlington, an absolutely action-packed race. We had a lot of big wrecks at the front of the pack. We had a very controversial finish between Joey Logano and the youngster William Byron, and let's go ahead and get into it. First off, we've got to talk about the fantastic finish. Obviously, the racing all day was great. We had a lot of action, a lot of passing for the lead, a lot of passing through the field, a lot of drivers making mistakes, hitting that wall, getting that Darlington stripe that we know of. But here, the main talk going into tomorrow is obviously going to be Joey Logano versus William Byron. A very controversial finish. Basically, Joey Logano got run up into the wall a little bit earlier on in the race on a restart. I'm not sure. I mean, Logano said in his post-race interview, "You're not going to put me in the wall and not expect to get one back." From what I saw, I think Logano maybe put himself in the wall there. I don't think William Byron really had a whole lot to do with that. I don't think Byron could have done anything different. Definitely didn't run him up in the wall on purpose or anything. So I'm a bit, I don't really agree with Logano on that comment. And then, of course, we have the finish where Logano kind of just dives into the back of the 24 car. Once again, not really the cleanest move. You can say rubbing is racing, but from what I see, it looked like it kind of just drove straight through him. I think Byron made a good point. He was going in there 10 miles an hour faster than he should have, and Logano, I mean, he won the race. He made the right move, I guess, but I mean, he would not have made the curve. He would not have made that turn if he hadn't have made that move. So it was an aggressive move by Logano, and I feel like every time Logano wins, we always have something controversial to talk about. There's never a Logano win where it's just like, oh, cool, Logano won. No, never. The fans are either cheering him on, or 9 times out of 10, he's getting booed more than Kyle Busch sometimes when he gets the win because of something controversial. You got to go back to Martinsville a couple years ago with Truex. Martinsville multiple times has had Logano in some trouble with other drivers. You got to go back to the Matt Kenseth incident. Every time Logano starts winning races and getting these wins, he's doing something controversial to get them. And William Byron said when he got out the car, he's got to drive through somebody to get that win. So I guess that's why they're always controversial, right? But no, let's kind of talk about it. I think Logano, he's kind of known and has this reputation for making kind of dirty moves on the racetrack. Now, from what I saw, you have to expect that back in a future race. If Byron has the opportunity to win a race, or this could be for a playoff spot or anything, you have to expect to potentially get wrecked by the 24. And this seems like a common theme with Logano. He does these things like what he did to Matt Kenseth, what he's done to Truex. And then gets upset when it comes right back to him in the following weeks or at the end of the season or a whole another year away. And that's what ultimately cost him a championship in 2015 was Matt Kenseth flat out running him into the wall in Martinsville. And I'm not saying that's what needs to be done or what will happen, but it's those type of instances. So Logano said it was payback. I don't think Byron did anything to start this. I mean, I think that opens the door for Byron to do the exact same thing to the 22 car in the future. Byron is a very clean racer. He's almost like to the book, which is why I think he could be the future of Hendrick Motorsports and maybe one of the best drivers of this decade coming up. And a very talented young driver. He's already got those 4 career wins, 2 this year, and almost 1 today. He's running up front every week. He ended up finishing 12th today after the incident, but Byron is a really clean racer. He's almost like perfect at some of these racetracks. I don't know if that's a result of the sim racing, all the practice that he does, but he drives every racetrack almost perfectly. I never saw him get up into the wall. I never saw him really hit Logano, except for on that restart when Logano kind of did that to himself, from what I saw at least. So Byron is a super clean racer. So I don't know. I don't know if he would retaliate or not. We'll have to see. Byron was obviously very upset, calling him a moron, an idiot in his post-race interview, which that's kind of cool. You know, usually Byron is super kind of polished. You know, he's real respectful in his interview. He's almost like he's on the racetrack, just a perfect, clean interview. Kind of boring sometimes, actually, but not. I like my Byron. Mad Byron is fun Byron. So we'll have to see if this kind of boils over for the rest of the season. We go to some other racetracks coming up, especially at Kansas next week. We'll have to see what happens and see if this rivalry continues to grow. So like I said, I talked about the very controversial finish. I don't know. This could continue over. I'm not sure. We'll have to continue to watch it. This is why you tune in next week, right? To see what happens with the 24 car and the 22. Like I said, I think it was a dirty move. We'll have to see what happens. But let's kind of go through the top 10 and a couple other guys I want to point out in this race. First off, I already mentioned, Joey Logano, the winner, knocked Byron out the way, kind of ran through him there at the end. But then Tyler Reddick in second place, another great run for Reddick. That's a good point today for him. I know he's kind of on the bubble. I'm gonna start looking at the playoff standings, maybe a little bit closer when we get after the Memorial Day race, the Coke 600. We're gonna start paying more attention to these playoff points and stuff like that. Who's going to get in? We're getting closer as we get into the summer portion of the schedule to the cut line to get into the playoffs. So certainly we'll look at that closer. But Tyler Reddick was kind of on that bubble. I think he was below the bubble there for a little while. But today maybe puts him above. We'll obviously have to check those standings as well. But Tyler Reddick's running up front every week. He just has that bad luck, or ungood circumstances, like when he run up front at Bristol, was about to win that race, and then got taken out. I bring up Auto Club all the time. He dominated Auto Club and then had a tire failure and then got slammed by the 24 car, took him out for the win for there. So I think Tyler Reddick is getting closer to that first career win. I do think it will come this year. Not sure when. He might need to stand up for himself a little bit more like Byron does, kind of, after today. But we'll have to see. I think Reddick's got that win coming because he's been really fast every week. Just kind of has some unfortunate things happen to him. Justin Haley. I feel like I mentioned him a couple of the last weeks, finishing in the top 10. Not a bad finish last week, but third for Justin Haley in the 31 Chevrolet. That is an absolutely good day for that team, and they've been running up front with making some good strategy moves. So a third place finish, that's really good for that 31 car. A lot of times you see Justin Haley, you would think, oh, he needs to be in the 20s or 30s sometimes. No, he's been running in the top 10 the last couple weeks, so just continue to watch that, making some. So he was actually a lap down at one point in this race, but was able to make all that up. And you have to be somewhat fast enough to run in the top 10. You can't be one of the slowest cars on the track and stay in the top 10. Maybe he wasn't the third fastest car, but he's got a fast enough race car to make a strategy call and finish third. So congratulations to him. That's a good finish for him. Kevin Harvick, fourth. He's been having a rough season. He's had a rough last couple of years. Kevin Harvick has ever since the end of that 2020 season. But to get a fourth place finish is obviously an improvement. I've been mentioning him the last couple of weeks too. Been consistently getting better as well as the whole SHR team. They've kind of been struggling a little bit at the beginning of the season. Besides the win at Phoenix, obviously with Chase Briscoe. But they're kind of stepping up. They're finishing a little bit better, running a little bit better. You see that with all four of the SHR cars. Chase Elliott, fifth place. Like I said last week, I think he could get on a little roll. I think potentially he might be one of your championship favorites because he runs very consistent every week. I mean, he's once again here in the top 5. He got the win last week at Dover, but he's not the fastest car every week. He's not the winning race car every week, but he's always consistently in the top 5 and the top 10 at least. So that's definitely something that's important to keep note of. He's never really the fastest car, but he's definitely always one of the fastest as far as like top 5 or top 10 cars. Christopher Bell, another top 10 run for him. I mention him every week when I do the top 10. Christopher Bell, another 6th place finish. Michael Mcdowell, another top 10 for the 34 Ford team. That's a great run for them. They finished top 10 last week, I believe. They finished top 10 at the Bristol Dirt. Another good run for the 34 team of Michael Mcdowell. He's been running up front in that top 10 lately, so I have to continue to watch him and see if he can get a little bit better. The next gen car kind of leveled the playing field, and you're seeing some of these guys usually don't see up front, run up front. And another example, that's going to be who we're going to look at in 8th place. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. in the 47 car. Finished second last week, and then of course finished in the top 10 again today, which was 8th place. Not a bad run at all. For that team. Like I said, finished last Monday at Dover, finished second. So and was battling for the win, that 47 team was. So a good run for Stenhouse Jr. as well. A lot of these guys that maybe you didn't see up front in the Gen 6 era, kind of with the next gen car running a little bit better, especially Stenhouse, because the start of the year for Stenhouse, it was terrible, and he's continuing to improve more and more as we go on. Austin Dillon ended up finishing 9th, and Daniel Suarez, that Trackhouse Racing team, once again in the top 10. Suarez got a little bit of work to do to catch that Ross Chastain teammate, but obviously running consistently in the top 10 is certainly good. Just got to kind of get those better results, which I think he will start to get more of as we continue on in the season. So I do have a few drivers. After looking at the top 10, I have a couple other drivers I obviously want to point out. That's going to be Suarez's teammate. I mentioned the Trackhouse Racing Organization, Ross Chastain. Oh, that's a heartbreaker for him. Ross Chastain was going for the lead, trying to pass Joey Logano, had one of, if not the fastest cars in the race, was very much a contender to get the win in this race, and making a move on Joey Logano mid-race or closer to the end of the race, just gets loose, completely loses control of the race car and goes and slams into the inside wall, completely taking him out of the race, ended up getting a DNF. And this race actually had 13 drivers that were in the garage. The 13 cars did not make it. That is the most this year, I believe, tied with Talladega. So that kind of shows you how many cars were taken out, especially with the big wreck there at the end. But yeah, DNF for Ross Chastain, certainly not good. I want to talk about Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch was another one of those drivers who definitely didn't have the fastest car, but he had a top 3, top 5 car. He should have been running up there. He might have had a chance to fix the car, get to the lead. And then Brad Keselowski, who's having a terrible year. Brad Keselowski wrecks every week, I think. Gets in the wall in front of Kyle, and he's like, I think maybe a lap or two down at this point, Keselowski is, and then Kyle Busch just rams into him and ruins Kyle Busch's day. Ooh, and that hurts as a Kyle Busch fan. We might need to get Brad Keselowski off the track, because I think right now he's becoming a hazard. He's wrecked every week, I think. I never mention him in the top 10 when I go through my list. He's just having a bad season. I think Keselowski's already starting to look forward to 2023 because it's been a really rough start to that new team this season that Brad Keselowski's running a part of. I just wanted to mention that as well. I do want to mention with the big wreck, we had a couple of guys taken out. I think it was 32 laps to go. We had this huge pile up on the back straightaway. That took out a couple of the front runners, which is why you kind of saw some unusual faces in the top 10. It took out Martin Truex Jr. got taken out in the wreck or had significant damage. Chase Elliott got a little bit of damage from that wreck. We had obviously your 2311 racing cars wrecked together again. It seems like they wreck together again every week as well. Out of their control for sure, but they wreck together. Bubba and Kurt Busch every week. They're wrecking into each other, and it's usually not their fault. So that's frustrating for that team as well. And they'll have to kind of try to find a way to avoid those incidents in the future. They're hard to do, but obviously just really unlucky. I mean, they get caught up in something every week. And then, of course, Denny Hamlin, you're one of your front runners. The Toyotas have been strong lately. The Toyotas have been running up front. Denny Hamlin especially has found a lot of speed after that win at Richmond. He just never gets a chance to prove it. Had trouble last week at Dover and, had a tire fall off, kind of a unlucky kind of accident there, not really in the driver's control. And then, of course, the incident today, getting caught up in the big wreck, took out a couple of those front-running Toyotas as well. So, certainly an exciting day at Darlington. The throwback weekend was exciting. It was cool to see all the old-school paint schemes, all the old-school stuff around the racetrack this whole weekend. And then you had a pretty decent crowd at Darlington this week. So, it was a great weekend. Like I said, a fantastic race, a very controversial finish, which we're going to be talking. I think that finish could definitely carry over. So, we have to keep an eye on the 24 car and the 22 car. And see if that kind of boils over into Kansas next week. But like I said, we do have Kansas next week. It should be exciting. We haven't been to a 1.5 mile cookie cutter track in a while. And if you go back to the beginning of the year when we raced at like Las Vegas, Auto Club, those 1.5 mile racetracks, those cookie cutter tracks that kind of have been deemed boring the last few years with the next gen car have been super exciting. So I'm excited to see what we got at Kansas next week. Kansas is kind of one of those better cookie cutter tracks anyway, but it should be a great race next week at Kansas. And I hope you guys tune in for that. I believe it's on FS1, I believe. So, yep. And then, of course, like and subscribe if you like this video. And come back next week for a Kansas race review. I'd love to have you guys back to watch the video. But that's it. That's all there's to talk about. And, of course, about Kyle Busch getting caught up in more trouble today. Let's get rowdy.